Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lane Cove West Meet the Candidates Zoom forum. Um, we'll be starting soon, but just a warning again that we are recording. In the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Camaragal people, and I pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. Thank you for watching tonight's Meet the Candidate Forum for West Ward. ITC has covered numerous elections over the last 12 years, and we have to say this election has been unique with the absence of the Liberal Party candidates. We've also less independents running this time. So tonight is going to be, for want of a better word, intimate. With only two candidates speaking tonight. The candidates will be speaking in the following order. And the order is Rochelle Flood from the Greens, then Katie Little from the Labor Party. We used a very advanced system of working out the speaking order. I used a hat and tiny strips of paper. All councillors were invited to the forum, and we just asked the lead candidates. However, you can see the rest of their team in our Meet the Candidates article that is on the front page of our website, and we'll also put a link in the chat. The other West Ward candidate is Scott Benison. Scott told me today at 11:39 a.m. that he could not make tonight and to provide his apologies. That's a shame, as Scott could not make our last Meet the Candidates forum at the last council election. However, to be fair, I offered Scott to meet with him and record him and then put the same questions to him that you asked tonight. I haven't heard back from him, but that offer is still standing. Okay, so how tonight's going to work. Each candidate will have 10 minutes. We usually say 5, and they don't have to take the whole 10, but given that there's only 2 of them, we're giving them 10. At the end of the candidate's presentation, I will put your questions to the candidates. So you can start typing your questions in the chat, and we'll start looking at them. You don't have to wait till the end. Each audience member can ask one question, and if we have time, we'll give people a chance to ask a second question. Please do not write anything in the chat that is offensive or derogatory or defamatory, because you'll be removed from the chat. Do not answer any questions on behalf of the candidates. Do not make any comments, just leave a question, because that makes it so much easier for us to moderate. The number one rule for tonight is respect. Please do not make any personal attacks via the chat about a candidate or any person. Putting your hand up for public office is very daunting, and people will be expelled from the chat who break our moderation rules. We will issue some warnings. And also, please put your questions to both candidates so that both of them get a chance to ask questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Councillor Rochelle Flood, and so she can give you her 10-minute presentation. Take it away, Rochelle.
Thanks very much, Jackie. And thank you for everyone for joining tonight. I think it's just so important at a local council level that we have forums like this and opportunities to hear from residents and genuinely talk about the key issues for our council. So I've lived in Lane Cove now for almost 10 years, and I still feel so fortunate to call Lane Cove home. One of the things that I love the most about living in Lane Cove is that we have such an incredibly knowledgeable and engaged local community. From individual residents to community groups, we've got a community here of people who genuinely care about the future of Lane Cove, and they're willing to put their time and their energy into making this a better place for all of us to live. And it's honestly because of this amazing community that I decided to stand for a second term on Lane Cove Council. I think Lane Cove deserves a council that listens to residents, amplifies their voices, and makes decisions that allow our community to thrive. I'm a strong advocate for genuine community consultation and a genuine community input into our decision making. I also support strong action on sustainability and our environment, as well as new measures to address things like the cost of living crisis at a local level by introducing affordable council-run childcare and looking at what we can do at the local level to address the housing crisis. I'm also a strong supporter of shared open spaces, and I want to see more investment in critical infrastructure, including bike paths. Before I get into sort of the more detail around these policies and these initiatives, I thought I'd just share a little bit about myself and my background for anyone who I haven't met yet. So as I said, I'm a long-term Lane Cove local, mainly living up in Lane Cove North, so I'm a little bit nervous about the internet at the moment. I'm deeply passionate about our local environment. I've got a background in environmental law at Macquarie University, and I have worked as an advocate and a campaigner for a range of environmental, animal welfare, and human rights organisations. And through doing that, I've come to understand just how important it is to bring about change from the grassroots level. And that's why I'm so passionate about local council, because it is the level that's closest to the people, and it gives us the best opportunity to work within communities to make things better for people. During the 3 years that I have been on Lane Cove Council, I feel that I've been really fortunate to work with our community on quite a number of key issues. So, being in Lane Cove West, one of the big issues that we've seen has been the new developments that have gone in up in the Mowbray precinct and around Mindarie. And we know that unfortunately, the local pedestrian safety measures haven't really kept pace with just how quickly our community has grown up in Lane Cove North. And so I've been really happy to work with local residents on the Lane Cove North traffic plan. And this was something that was in the pipeline before I started on council, but I've been really happy to be able to go out and talk to people about the issues to make sure that the final plan that was actually passed through council addresses those pedestrian safety concerns and hopefully delivers better outcomes for people. Another big local issue that I think a lot of people have been following lately is the issue around 14 Gay Street. I was really happy to be able to work with the Lane Cove North Residents Association and the Lane Cove Bushland Society to work through the issues around 14 Gay Street, and to make sure that this site that council acquired was kept as bushland for our community. And residents, they took me through on several site walks, and we were able to talk about just how important it was to the local community and how important this piece of bushland was for future generations, and also for expanding habitat for our local wildlife. So again, that's something that I think it was just so important to work with the community and to use those connections and to appreciate the input of residents in making these big decisions. When I stood for election in 2021, I made it clear that I was really committed to sustainability and protecting our natural environment. I'm happy that over the last 3 years, I've been able to bring more focus to sustainability. I successfully pushed for Lane Cove Council to introduce the first round of sustainability rebates. So these are rebates that people can get for rooftop solar, battery storage, EVs. And I know from talking to people that, this was really helpful. We're in a cost of living crisis, and not everyone in Lane Cove is wealthy, and it makes a difference in terms of making it easier for people to make that switch over to solar. And so I was really happy to be able to do that for our community and to help deliver better outcomes for our environment. At the same time, I worked to get a new policy at council to ensure that public money, that ratepayer money, isn't being invested with banks that lend to big fossil fuel industries. We have such an environmentally minded community, and I think it's important that where we invest our funds, that that aligns with our values. And so pushing for that and helping to push sustainability issues so that we've got values that align with our community has been something I've been really proud to do at council. During the last term, I was also able to work with some young women who came to me, and they were working in the inner west, and they had seen what some of the other councils had done around addressing issues with period poverty. And so I spoke to them and talked about, what they wanted to see in Lane Cove. And then I went to staff and brought a motion to council to get a trial of free period care products in council buildings. So particularly where young women are, because, we know that there are issues around period poverty, and we also know that there's a lot of stigma for young women. And so that was a way to address that issue. But, as is the case, there are so many things that need more work. which is why I have put my hand up again. I want to make it easier for people living in units and strata buildings to be able to get access to solar. So the rebates were a good start, but I know from talking to people that not everyone has been able to access it. I'm a renter myself. I live in a unit and I haven't been able to avail myself of solar panels. And so I think something that we need to look at in the next term of council is something like a community battery, so that people who are living in strata buildings, which is a big chunk of the Lane Cove population, that they have access to cheaper renewable energy. So I think that's something that really needs to be a focus for the next council. I'm also really keen to support calls for better enforcement of building standards in Lane Cove. I've spoken to so many residents and I've been out to see firsthand the issues with sediment runoff. And I think with the state government introducing more housing across Lane Cove, particularly up in the St Leonard's area, that we might end up seeing more issues. So we're going to need a council that is environmentally minded and that is willing to stand up to developers and make sure that we have, in any new developments going on, that we have good standards around protection of the environment, that we're not being impacted by sediment runoff, and that we've got developments going in a sustainable and well-planned way. And if I am given another opportunity on council, I will continue the work I started to attempt to bring essential services back in-house at council. So one key area for this is around early childhood education. So council actually own a large number of childcare centres, but currently we are only operating one of those centres ourselves, and that's Kindy Cove. So Kindy Cove has one of the longest wait lists. It has the cheapest fees for people, and it's a very popular facility. And I would love for us to look at bringing more of the centres that council owns back into management within council to help lower fees and make it easier and more affordable for the community to enrol their children. I think we have so many people in Lane Cove who have young families, and with the cost of living going up and up, the access to childcare is so important. And it's something that as a council we can do to try and make that easier for people, so they're not having to go without those essential services and their kids are getting the best possible start in life, and it's not something that's going to break the bank. I'll also continue advocating for more support around affordable housing. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a renter. I know from speaking to so many people in the community that the cost of housing in this area is causing a significant problem, and that's right across Sydney. That's not just a Lane Cove issue, but it is something that we can look at addressing as a local council. Some of the new developments that are planned around the transport-oriented development, there will be requirements there for affordable housing, and there'll be opportunities for council to manage and sort of oversee those affordable homes. And I think it's going to be really vital that as a council, we do push for affordable homes in the new developments, particularly for key workers like teachers, nurses, those people who keep our community running, who keep it vibrant, and who are currently being pushed further and further out because they can't afford to find a place to live. And this is something that's going to impact established families in Lane Cove as well. I know from chatting to people who do currently own their home that they have kids who are looking at moving out and starting their own families, and they're worried that they won't be able to stay near their community network, their support network. And so I think Lane Cove would be so much worse off if we lose young people, if we lose key workers like nurses and teachers. We need to do what we can to make sure that they're getting supported, and council can play a role in that with affordable housing policies. I also wanted to talk briefly about the provision of adequate cycleways here in Lane Cove. Again, this is a big issue. I've spoken to so many people on this.
Rochelle, you just faded out there for a second. I'm not sure why.
Oh, where did I fade out?
Um,
Cycleways.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure how I'm going for time. Okay,
okay, you've got about 30 seconds left.
okay. In that case, I might just wrap that up and just say, look, I want to reiterate that I always put the community first. I know some people are concerned about the involvement of parties in local council. I hope for those who have worked with me, you know that I put our community first. I'm not beholden to anyone above me. I'm guided by key principles around sustainability and around social justice. But first and foremost, I think the role of the councillor is to be the community's advocate, to work with our community and try and get good outcomes on things like housing affordability, on cycleways, on open spaces, and just making sure that Lane Cove continues to be a great place to live and somewhere where we have a community that's able to thrive.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Really appreciate that. And next, I would like to introduce you to Katie Little, who is the Labor candidate for Lane Cove West. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Jackie. Hi, everybody. My name's Katie Little. Now, where do I even begin? Basically, I'm the candidate running for Labor Lane Cove, which I'm really so honoured and thrilled to be invited to be able to do that. I think Lane Cove is the most wonderful cosmopolitan place. A couple of people have come up to me in the plaza and said, "Is it true that you live in Hunters Hill?" Yes, I am across the river. And I got this incredible phone call sort of saying, would you consider running for a councillor position? And I thought that is just so exciting. There is an affirmative action program with Labor that there has to be a certain percentage of women who are running. And I think it's 3 out of 7. There were some fabulous women, obviously, in the Lane Cove Labor branch and in the area, but I was so excited. I've always been involved in my local community, and I literally went door knocking and found someone who owns a business in Lane Cove to put me on basically on the non-electoral roll, which is standard practice in New South Wales and not a big deal. And I am in the electorate of North Sydney. I worked, and curiously enough, in some of my casual jobs, I worked in one of the last elections and on the referendum as well, actually counting votes and doing that too. So I thought, gosh, this is amazing. What an incredible opportunity. And so I thought I'll just have a coffee and talk about this. And then I met Andrew Zabik, who is one of the most incredible people I've really ever met. And James, who's on my ticket as well, who is so inspirational, works for Transport New South Wales and has a degree in city planning and is so incredible. And Heather Ogilvie, who is also on my ticket, she's absolutely one of the most remarkable women I think I've ever met, if you're watching tonight, Heather. And I just thought, these people are so amazing. Ken and David as well, who are running in the other wards too, just absolutely so knowledgeable, so generous with knowledge. And I just feel like I've been swept up in this incredible momentum, thinking how this is amazing. For me personally, really only a couple of months ago, I was sitting there thinking, all these new coercive control laws that are being introduced, and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if there was somewhere you could go where you could get help to understand some of these new laws that are coming in. I know I've got teenage kids as well, which they're changing laws to do with social media usage with that. And a good friend of mine too got caught up in a scam, lost a lot of money, did his due diligence by researching a company with ASIC and still managed to it was like a shell thing that was and lost money. So I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if there was a place you could go that was like a resource centre where you could say, something's making me feel uncomfortable and I don't know, I'm not quite sure what it is, or I feel a bit uneasy, and can you help me? Because in this day and age, I think finding out that you're getting the correct information, it can be quite daunting, and particularly for some people too, younger people possibly, older people possibly as well, if there's different ways of communicating now with electronics, all sorts of things, new laws coming into play. So literally I was thinking these things, and then as these phone calls and I started meeting people, I found myself sitting at a table with these terrific people coming up with, who were all brainstorming key campaign ideas, and sort of said, Katie, have you got any suggestions? I said, I'd really love a resource centre, particularly for people who are feeling uneasy, whether it might be around scams or possibly abusive situations that they don't even know they're in. They can't go to the police. That seems too terrifying. They've been to the doctor or something, maybe who the doctor was thinking, oh, this person's sounding a bit neurotic, you know, off you go. Where do you go to actually get some help and support and advice? And suddenly this table of terrific people all said, that's a great idea. You know, let's try and get establish a social support resource centre specifically to address these things. So I just feel so excited that that's now one of the key campaign ideas that's been put up, which I just go, this is really remarkable. So I'm so grateful to have found myself involved with really just such a remarkable team of people, and who I'm very excited, because I thought personally I have and I still do a lot of work in my community. I established my mum, Jeannie Little, who you might remember, had Alzheimer's, which is, and it still blows my mind every time I say it, the #1 cause of death for Australian women, which I can't believe if you picked up a newspaper and went through it, you probably wouldn't even see mention of it. So when mum got sick, I thought, you know, mum wouldn't want everyone sitting around being depressed and stuff. What can we actually do that's terrific? So I set up, and I'm still patron of the Jeannie Little Alzheimer's Research Fund with Neura at Prince of Wales Hospital, which was specifically set up to put money into research for Alzheimer's. And I just spent 10 years raising awareness around that. So that took up at least a good 10 years of my life. And then mum died only about, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, and my father as well. So I felt like that huge chapter kind of ended, and I've still been doing all sorts of things, been involved with community radio. You know, back I used to run the local play group, Fig Tree Play Group, and then I was the fundraising coordinator at the Montessori preschool. I'm still sort of, you know, always involved with any fundraisers that my Boronia Park Public School put on. All kinds of stuff. I'm always speaking at Rotary and Probus clubs around the place too. So I just thought, when this opportunity came up, I thought, what an amazing opportunity for me as a single mum as well. You know, I thought, gosh, this is a way that I can continue to do the things that I love, which is putting back into my community. And so basically too, I should mention as well, to do with Lane Cove as well, my grandmother, she lived in Greenwich for years in Glenwood Nursing Home. So that's pretty much my 20s was spent every week seeing her. And I'm always very frequently in Lane Cove, either working. My eldest son works in Lane Cove. I was there sort of DJing at the Fit Marathon the running challenge, sort of, I think that was a weekend or 2 ago, or running trivia nights or speed dating events there, all sorts of events and things going on like that. So, and my close friends live there. And I did a book signing in Dimmicks Lane Cove. So if everyone keeps saying, what's she doing? Why does she want to be part of this? Lane Cove to me is just such a fabulous, cosmopolitan, wonderful LGA that is just really setting the benchmark, particularly when it comes to environmental concerns, you know, putting in EV charging stations. You know, it really has to me like a European feel. I think it's so wonderful. So when my kids, I've got 3 kids, and when they were little, I spent every weekend in the plaza, which I used to go there because the Lane Cove Library was so fantastic, is so fantastic. And the Riverview Toy Library, I was going there every week because my eldest son, you know, has very fabulous, you know, ADHD, which I'm sure, you know, my mum had as well. So he was going through a jigsaw puzzle every week. And I think, gosh, you know, now I'm coming back and seeing a bit, particularly that, you know, Lane Cove Labor did, you know, the toy library and has made it sort of rebirthed it again. So I think this is just amazing to be actually involved with such an inspirational team of people. I haven't come across anything quite like it. And just coming up with the campaign ideas, I'm so excited when I sort of read through it to think that I've been part of this. It's just wonderful. So really we thought how could we sort of break it down into three sort of groups of policies which reflect our values, all of us. So creating safe spaces, we thought, which was terrific, that establishing a social resource support centre to help people with scam protection or finding out about new coercive control laws, that sort of fits in under there. The other conversation I had, which I thought was amazing straight away too, is, giving support for families impacted by domestic violence, and particularly giving immediate access with short-term accommodation, which I thought, this isn't just sort of, talking about pie in the sky, maybe how could we do it? This is actually coming up with ideas of let's make it happen now, because there are so many women who are being affected by domestic violence, and it's such an issue. How do we even, start to tackle this right here? Like, what can we do practically to address this right now? And so creating safe spaces, then healthy lifestyles and sustainable environment. They're sort of the three topics we've put things under. Now, me going for as a lead candidate for Lane Cove West, the top issue that we're all talking about is the shops in Mindari shops in Lane Cove North, which it's a site that's owned by Homes New South Wales. I went to the sort of drop-in centre. I've been doing a video. I've been talking to people about it. There's 86 apartments being built, and there's a real opportunity for Homes New South Wales and Lane Cove Council to work together to actually possibly sort of, build another layer in underneath and make a local community centre with a local shop that those residents really, really need. At the moment, they're all having to go up to the plaza or wherever, which is impacting traffic. And it really, that area there really needs a local shop and maybe a daycare centre, maybe a hairdresser, maybe a doctor. And that can be achieved by getting good communication going between the council and Homes New South Wales. And so I've just been talking to residents around the area about that. So that's really top of my list in my Lane Cove West, where I'm going for. So I've been actually answering emails. People have been contacting me that too. There was a lovely lady who contacted me who sort of said, how do you feel about this? It's, social housing and affordable housing going into our local area. And so when I did a bit of research into that too, I learnt that Lane Cove Council was awarded a community-led resilience program. They got awarded for this about, putting strategies in to make more cohesive sort of neighbours meet each other and stuff. There's so many fantastic things about Lane Cove, and that's what I keep coming back to, that being in the plaza with my kids when they were little and then going, oh, we'll just stay away for a bit because the whole of the car park's all been dug up and it's all this construction, and then coming back and seeing the canopy is the most remarkable, fabulous place. It's one of the only places that hasn't been destroyed by a huge shopping centre that's just overwhelmed everything and become this sort of boring, monotonous whatever. It's just like a little fabulous area with all wonderful sort of avenues and everything. It's so terrific. And same with Blackman Park actually too. I was always down at Blackman Park with my kids. My daughter did ballet lessons down there with Sunshine Arms, doing ballet classes, I still remember. And then that was all sort of stuff happening down that too. And then the Blackman skate park is just fantastic. And then, of course, the $81 million sport and recreation centre, which is being built. I just think, wow, it's been done with such long-term vision. It's really so exciting. So for me, stuck over here in, Boronia Park sort of side over here too, in my own street, I had to sort of, pester, campaign, just to get some speed humps put in my local street where cars are coming around the corner and flipping upside down. There's been so many cars taken out, it's ridiculous. And we sort of had to wait 10 years to get a couple of speed humps, and then they kind of just peeled off a couple of weeks later. So I think I come over, when I'm working at Lane Cove every second day and just go, it's just such a fantastic place. And if I have the opportunity to be a councillor in Lane Cove Council, it would just be really remarkable, and I wouldn't believe my own luck, to be quite frank. I just think it would be the most incredible opportunity, and particularly too at the beginning when I was having conversations and
Katie, that's your time up. So
time, I'll zip up then. Yeah.
I think that was a good place to end, actually. So that's good.
Cool.
Okay, so while I've got you here, I might as well ask you the first question if you're okay with that.
Sure.
And this is from Janelle, and she said, a group of residents has been lobbying council and Bluefit for better community access to the Lane Cove Aquatic Centre 50-metre outdoor pool. The lease she's saying that the lease with Bluefit was negotiated without community consultation. What is your position on community consultation on leasing of community property to these for-profits, particularly as this, wow, this is long, and it's all in caps, particularly as this, it's really hard to read in caps, was negotiated without community. What is your position on community consultation on leasing of community property to for-profits as this has been proposed for the sport and rec under construction now? So basically, in a nutshell, what do you think about third parties who are run for profit running council properties?
I'm very privileged that I've got a great team of people to work with. So for me, it's been great to be able to take matters back and discuss with them. From what I understand with the Lane Cove swimming pool, you know, and I don't think things should be run that we don't know how to run unless, you know, I know there was a topic. I mean, there's several topics that are all springing to mind, so I'm trying to address them all at once too. So I know with the Lane Cove swimming pool too, there was lots of residents saying, why isn't the water warmer in summer? And there was a huge issue in winter, sorry. And there was a huge issue about that too. So, but then you can't just say, oh, we just need to heat the water temperature up, because then you sort of, you know, the gas bill's going up and you need to think in a long-term way. So absolutely, community consultation for sure. And same with the, you know, there was the issue as well with sort of, you know, dogs and sports fields as well too, which that's now being taken into community consultation as well too. Personally, just me personally, I don't believe in privatising things. I think that's why I'm with, you know, running with Lane Cove Labor, because of the ethos of really putting community first and looking after all facets of community, not just, you know, selling out sort of things, and then ultimately you end up in a worse position where, you know, you end up paying more for things further down the tracks. I think you know, public facilities should be, you know, run as best they can, unless you need to bring in sort of consultation help, really. Does that answer the question?
Well, we'll throw it over to Rochelle.
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you, Janelle, for the question. I have spoken to quite a few people about the issues around access to the pool and the desire for longer hours, and I think that is an issue. And in my view, it does stem partly from the way that it's managed. So I think if council is making any decision about a public asset like Bluefit, they need to consult on who's going to be doing the management to make sure that it is fit for purpose. It's a community asset. We've used council money to build it, to essentially set it up. We need to have community input in how it's managed. And that's actually partly what I was talking to when I was referring to bringing council services back in-house. So I use the example of early childhood education, but I think, again, Bluefit, the Aquatic Centre, all of those things, that's another one where we would benefit, the community would benefit from council having greater control. If it's council managed, it's much easier for us to look at how do we make the fees more affordable? Can we lower entry fees for pensioners? Can we lower entry fees for children? Can we extend those hours for the outdoor pool to meet the demand from the community? Can we better balance who has access to the swimming lanes so that everyone in the community is able to use this public facility? So I am firmly in support of council managed services, and that's something I really want to look at in greater detail, is how do we bring existing facilities back into council management so that we've got better control and we can give better outcomes to residents around these issues. And for any new facilities, how do we make sure that we don't end up in similar situations where we have outsourced management, which is causing issues for residents that we then struggle to resolve? So really keen to avoid that in the future as well.
Thank you, Rochelle. So while I've got you, I'm going to ask the next question. What is the role, this is from Heather, what is the role of council in addressing the housing crisis and providing affordable homes?
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you, Heather, for the question. So this is a big issue for me. I think at the end of the day, housing is a human right. People deserve to know that they've got a stable roof over their heads, and our community is better for it if a diversity of people can afford to live here. If we aren't losing our teachers, our nurses, the people working in our cafes, the people staffing our restaurants, we as a community will be better off if we have more affordable housing. That's the reality, and I think we are at a crisis point with how unaffordable housing has gotten and with how many people are struggling to keep a roof over their heads, from young families through to the largest growing demographic of homeless people, which is women who have retired and who are now single. These issues are society wide, and as a council, we do have a role to play. So City of Sydney and Waverley, and there's a number of other councils who have done work around this. They've developed a full and comprehensive affordable housing policy. They levy developers so that you've got a fund that can be used to acquire affordable properties that council can then manage. And it's successfully been modelled overseas in places like London, where councils effectively manage it, and the funds that come in from the properties they already have, they can then use that to sort of get, another 2-bedroom unit, another 1-bedroom unit for an older woman who might be struggling to keep a roof over her head. And you can sort of run it in a way that's really cost effective. It doesn't have to become, bigger than Ben-Hur. This can be just something that Cove is doing to help make sure we're keeping that diversity, that people aren't being pushed out of our suburb, and that we've got that safety net for people so they've always got a roof over their heads.
Thank you, Rochelle. Katie, would you like to answer that question? You're on mute again, Kate, so we'll just get you asked. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Labor absolutely supports developing medium density housing, and particularly with the inclusion of affordable housing. I think Rochelle mentioned for a split second there too, women in particular who are like middle-aged women. I remember sharing these statistics, and now I can't go into my own personal story really, but it's terrifying. There's so many women who are very much impacted by all sorts of abusive situations a lot of the time too, who really need that. And so people who contact me too saying, I'm really worried about the sort of people who are going to move into the affordable housing and stuff. I think it's a third is the percentage, generally women. And so it's mainly sort of the elderly as well, or disabled people too. So the more we can build in terms of housing, particularly affordable housing, absolutely, yes, that has to happen. But it has to be backed by services to support this as well.
Thank you. While you're there, I'll ask you the next question from Julia, and we've sort of touched on this. What can council do to make basic services more affordable to the community? For example, the pool, which I think we've probably touched on a bit, but enrolment in local childcare centres.
What was that question? Sorry. What can council do to make
basic services more affordable, like the pool and early childhood centres?
Look, personally, I think I'm a single mum who I'm supporting 3 kids. I think the services that are in Lane Cove deserve to be celebrated, really. The facilities, there are so many things that are amazing, like the Blackman Skate Park is fantastic. We're doing plans as well. We've got a great plan to come up with this is David's baby actually, a water park in Newlands Park as well. So the more, which would be fantastic. Actually, it's such a fantastic site to build like a water park as well. That's like free for families, particularly to go sort of with kids as well. Would be wonderful too. So the more free amenities I think you can put in. We've also got the idea of doing a night food market as well at Pottery Greens too. So the more kind of free family entertainment I think you can provide, the better really. And then obviously when it comes to places where you've got to pay for things as well too, to keep the costs down, absolutely, and listen to what residents need and want.
Thank you, Katie. Rochelle, would you like to answer that question?
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, so I think I did speak to some of this already, but I think for me, the first key step is bringing those services back in-house. So we know from looking at the provision of childcare in Lane Cove that some of the more expensive ones are the ones that have been outsourced to for-profit operators. And look, they have a place. I'm not saying that they don't, but when it's a council-owned facility and we could potentially be managing that in-house and having it at a lower cost for local families, I think that's absolutely something that we need to be prioritising. It's a fundamental service, and I think the main benefit that comes from it shouldn't just be the bottom line, it should be what it's doing to make our society a better place. We know that primarily a lack of affordable childcare impacts women. It impacts women my age. I'm a young woman in my 30s. I know from so many of my friends who have started families themselves that they have struggled with returning to work, because when they start returning to work and they're paying high childcare fees, they have to look at it and say, is this worth doing? Is it worth continuing my career? Because I'm now paying more for childcare than I would in compared to what I would be earning. And so that is such a problem. It's a real barrier. And we need to be looking at what we can do as a council. And I think considering we own a number of facilities that could be brought in-house, that's something that we should be looking at as a priority. And if we obtain new childcare facilities, such as we have in St Leonard's, where we've had voluntary planning agreements and developers have essentially under that agreement given a childcare centre, we should be looking at keeping the management of that in-house and making sure it's affordable for local families, so that they're not struggling, and so that kids are given the best possible start when they're going into school. And I think the other part of the question from Julia was around sport as well. So again, for me, that comes down to in-house management. So with any centres, and this is something that when we looked at the procurement for the new sport and recreation facility that we're building, I did advocate for that to be kept in-house, because again, it's such an essential thing that people need access to, and we should be providing it in an affordable way. So I'm very keen to see those services brought in-house. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. So this question is from Lucas. My son plays sport every Saturday at Blackman Park, and lately has stepped in dog poo not once but twice. Eek. I've noticed signs put up to remind pet owners to be more responsible, but I'd like to know if you would support limiting dog access to our playing fields to protect our children. I'm over picking up poo from my child's shoes. Do you want to answer that first, Rochelle?
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Look, I can really understand the frustration, and thank you for raising it. I think we need to work out how we can be more respectful of how we use our shared green spaces. And this comes down to dog owners who are using it, but it also comes down to sporting teams. To my councillor email, I've received photos of plastic debris, food, broken things left on the field after sporting clubs have been there on weekends as well. So I don't think this is just an issue with dog owners. I think across the board, we need to look at how do we educate our community, how do we make sure that we're leaving the space as we found it, that it's there for everyone to enjoy. And I think there's a way we can do that through educating the community, reaching out to people, and if necessary, looking at a system of fines. Personally, I don't support moving to prohibit dogs from being on sports fields. A huge portion of our local government area of Lane Cove lives in units, and a lot of those people still have dogs, and everyone in our community deserves access to open green spaces. And so I really think we need to look at other ways to make sure that all users of the sports fields are leaving them in a good condition when they leave, and that way everyone still has access and they've got those shared spaces for all of us.
Thank you, Rochelle. Katie?
Well, I'm a dog owner. I've got a huge wolfhound cross Great Dane who's huge, who's fantastic, and I adore him to bits. I also work with dogs too. I'm a dog walker and a dog boarder as well, so I know that people have livelihoods looking after companion animals as well. As far as I'm concerned, it's about sharing spaces and being respectful of other people's spaces. And I know that the Lane Cove Labor group all supports that idea as well too, that sports grounds can be used when the sport is on, and dog owners can respect that and let them do that. And then likewise, it's me personally, every time I take my dog onto an area that's being used for sport some of the time too, I'm very respectful of that. So I always pick up after my dog. And I usually, if I see some other stuff somewhere, I pick that up too. It's just about having courtesy for each of the other groups. And one doesn't have to necessarily exclude one or the other. And I realize that it's turned into a bit of a hot topic. And what kind of gets my goat a little bit about these sorts of situations is that sometimes I think it's turning it into sort of quite a divisive issue when it really doesn't need to be. It's about just everybody living in a community, and we're living, tightly packed these days too. So we have to respect that some people are going to absolutely love to use sports grounds, and it's really important for mental health is the main thing now that people are saying, get out, get active, have an active lifestyle. And on the other team, there's the people who are dog owners who absolutely adore their dogs and say that's my number one recreational activity, which is me. That's my recreational activity. So I think absolutely shared. But I know there was a plan to have a community consultation about this as well too. So it's just listening to what the community says as well. But I don't think it needs to be an issue. Everyone can work together harmoniously to have a great outcome.
Thanks, Katie. So this is from Simon, and Simon says that he's been really appreciative of the access that he's had to Rochelle, and prior to that, Andrew Zivic. They did great work on Gay Street, and it was simply outstanding. And he would have liked to put this question to Councillor Bennison, but can I ask both candidates what they think is an appropriate level of access to the community for councillors, and any observation on their preferred method of communication? Does that make sense, Katie? Do you want me to? Oh, you got to unmute.
Again, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the question is how do you get in contact with me? My life's an open book. I'm approachable through social media. I love talking to people. So I thought, gosh, I've been talking to people in supermarket queues or waiting to get a coffee for years. And now, this is great. I love talking to people. So if it's a job talking to people, that's fantastic. And feel free to phone me up as well. I don't mind. That's great.
You mentioned the appropriate level of access to the community for councillors.
Right. For councillors themselves. I know Andrew was fantastic, and David as well, and I think Ken too do weekly sort of to camera kind of Zoom updates too, which I think is really great in this day and age too, to keep people updated, because lots of people want to know what's going on, and it's just a nice friendly way to just bring people up to speed after each council meeting, what's going on. And I'd absolutely would take over. I mean, this for me to be doing a councillor job would be, it's just about having meaning, really, isn't it? Of thinking you're doing something meaningful for the society. So for your society. So just providing a Zoom update, I think, is great. And then wherever, social media is terrific.
Thank you so much, Rochelle.
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you, Simon, for the question. And look, I also found it great working with you, Simon, and with all of the others around the issue of 14 Gay Street. And for me, I think councillors need to have a great deal of access within the community. Our main and core function is to listen to the community and effectively to help advocate for our community to get better outcomes. So I think you need to be approachable. You need to be willing to go and talk about different issues. And, you're not always going to see eye to eye at the start, but I think the great thing, and this is what I mentioned at the start, in that we have such an engaged community who genuinely want to see good outcomes for Lane Cove, that's an asset for us as a council. We have so many people who have incredible knowledge about bushland, about, local traffic issues. We've got these people who have been in Lane Cove for so long, and they know the issues back to front. And I think it's really vital that we are, as councillors, listening and hearing that and helping to amplify that. So I think that's, for me, you need to have a lot of access, and I always hope to be approachable and easy to access for the community.
Thanks, Rochelle. Look, the next question I think we've touched on, so you could probably just give me a quick answer with the sport and rec. But basically, Alex is asking, my question is, where do the candidates stand on the operation of sport and rec facility, and will they advocate to prioritise community access to the facility? So I guess that's a bit different to the previous questions in that they're talking about community access rather than organised sport. Do you want to answer that first, Rochelle?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can I just get you to repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, sure. The question is, where do the candidates stand on the operation of the sport and rec facility, and will they advocate to prioritise community access to the facility?
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is a really important issue, and this sort of goes to the heart of what I was speaking about before. I think it is vital. We're spending a lot of money on this new facility, and we need local residents to be able to have access so that we're delivering that to people who need it. So I really do support working to make sure we have priority for local residents and for our community. During the process, we're able to talk to a lot of different groups, the people who were using the old golf clubhouse for dancing, people who were using it for all different reasons. And now we've got more sports users who are going to be looking for spaces, from the, some of the local young kids playing netball to the basketball groups. There's a lot of people who need access, and I think we do need to look at what we can do to make sure that residents in the community are getting good access. During the procurement process, I did try and advocate for council to manage the facility in-house. As I said, that wasn't supported, but I would continue to push during any sort of negotiation process with an external operator to make sure that we've got those protections in place, to make sure that we're getting really good outcomes for the community in using that facility.
Thank you. Katie?
That mute button again. The Sport and Rec Centre is so fantastic. I think it's going to be 8 courts, and then there's discussion, I think, of trying to get another 2 indoor courts, bringing it to a total of 10. So absolutely, it's for the community to use. That's what it's about. And I know from what I've heard too, there's discussion as well of building maybe like a recreation centre in that area as well too. So the more sort of services and places you can provide like this too, it's like so important for, I don't know about everyone else, but teen health, mental health these days is just so important. And the more you can provide access to places like that, and I didn't even mention before too, with the cycleway as well, like that's just such an exciting program. The idea of building that shared bicycle path as well, right up to sort of Linley Point cycleway too, which I thought, oh, is that just for sort of, hardcore cyclists? No, it's for families as well. So all of these things are so important for the community. Yes.
Thank you, Katie. While I've got you, Susan's asked, can each of the candidates indicate why they are qualified to represent this community and to advocate for its particular needs and interests? If you don't reside in West Ward, how can voters know they understand the issues that confront those living here? As a Lane Cove North resident, I know this area is often overlooked. For example, our kids go to Mowbray Public School, but our school is never included in Lane Cove Council events. The shops would be great, but that was the policy the Labor campaigned on the last time around. How can we know that something council can actually deliver? Whoa, that was a big one. You okay with that, Katie, or you want me to?
Yeah. So I suppose there's 2 parts to that question. The first is probably the bigger picture, the one about why am I qualified to do it. I've done all kinds of things in my life. I'm a self-starter. I wrote a book. I did this. I was on sort of, 60 Minutes when they did their COVID-19 special because I'd already taken my kids out of school. I've always been interested in accessing information and trying to distribute it to people in the best way forward and help people with getting the right and correct information. When this opportunity came into my life, I kind of thought to myself, could I really do this? Is this, suitable for me? As a single mum supporting 3 kids, plus I've just become I was working 6 different casual jobs, which I gave that up to become a full-time foster carer only fairly recently. I work as a female health educator as well for Family Planning New South Wales too. And I thought, you know what, I'm living, you know, what do they say? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. I thought, you know, for me as a woman, as a single woman who is really struggling to support, well, not struggling, but really putting everything I've got into supporting my family, I want to be the voice, if I can be given that opportunity, to speak up for women who really need help and support in our community. That's my number one priority. And I thought, if I don't sort of say, you know, yes, I would like to be heard and represent that demographic of the community, that's my main aim, really. And thinking about sort of, you know, children's mental health issues and stuff too, which is extremely tricky as well. Parents in this day and age, it's not like it was before. We're now dealing with social media and electronics. The school education system hasn't really changed. So you're dealing with all sorts of things. It's not the same as it was, and life is changing and moving very fast, and we're having to just adapt and keep up with things and deal with sort of, you know, kids who've been in lockdown and all sorts of stuff going on. So that's why I'm motivated to do this. The second part of the question is about actual Lane Cove West and Lane Cove North as well. I know how you feel. I am in the sausage side of, you know, Hunters Hill sort of thing, where all the services are on the other side, all the fun, interesting things are going on sort of over there. And now, only just now, there's a few things, oh, maybe you might get a speed hump sort of put in over here too. So I hear your frustration. If it makes you feel better, I'm continually over in Lane Cove in that area too. And Andrew's, who's so amazing, has literally taken me around in his car, and I followed him around with a notebook, making notes of all these things, lots of places I'm already familiar with. And I love getting to know every nook and cranny, and would love to absolutely prioritise Lane Cove West so that you get the services that you really, really need, particularly Mindarie. That's where those beautiful playgrounds and everything have been built. That would just be so great to have, like, a shops and things there to make it into a terrific neighbourhood centre, which would actually make the safety aspect of it much better too, with better lighting and stuff like that too. So I'm really keen to hear what you want and make that happen for you, hopefully.
Rochelle?
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you for the question. I think it is a really good one. So for me, as I said at the start, I've lived in Lane Cove for almost 10 years, most of that time in Lane Cove North, recently moved towards Lane Cove West. So I am very familiar with the issues in that area. And during my time on council, I've really put in the time just to speak to people in all of the different parts of Lane Cove North to get an understanding of those key issues. And I've been so fortunate that people have been willing to give the time to talk through those issues with me. During my time on council, we, with the staff, we established the Mowbray Precinct group, which was sort of looking at how do we address all of those developments that are going on? How do we give people an opportunity to come into a forum, to sit down with the Westward councillors, with the staff, with the developers, and sort of raise issues. So we heard concerns about parking, you know, people blocking footpath access, and this is an ongoing issue. Just yesterday, I got sent a photo of a path that was blocked, and a mother with a pram was forced to walk around a blind corner on the road on Mindarie Street because it had been blocked off. And so that's partly why we set up that working group, basically to sit down with residents, with staff, with developers, and with the councillors. Beyond that, you know, again, I think it is just the key thing that makes you qualified is putting in the time, knowing the issues, and talking to people. And so again, with issues around Stringybark Creek Reserve, for example, I know a lot of people feel that compared to the other side of Epping Road, that a lot of the facilities up that end, they just don't get as much attention. And so we've been talking through issues around drainage, trying to talk to residents about, you know, what we can do in the interim while we work on the master plan, and just really trying to drill down into those issues. So I think, again, that's just a really key thing, is talking to people and going out on the ground and seeing the issues in person. And it was the same with the Lane Cove North traffic plan. You know, all of these issues, it's about talking to residents, it's about being familiar with the area and putting the time in.
Thanks, Rochelle. While I've got you, I'm going to ask the next question from Liz. Could the candidates comment on aged care? What do they see as the key issues that council might be able to address?
Thank you for that question. Look, I know this is Lane Cove, like a lot of places, we are starting to get an ageing population. We've got our age-friendly plan, which Council has been updating to look at what we can do to make sure that we've got support for residents so that they can age in place. I think that's a really key issue. People need to be able to stay around their community networks. They need to keep those connections and they need to feel that they're supported. And we also need to make sure that Council is communicating with older residents in a way that they can access that information in an easy way. And I think that's something that potentially hasn't been done as well in the past, and we need to look at what we can do to improve on that. And another key issue, which it doesn't just affect the older community, but I think they have been quite significantly impacted, is around issues with public transport. So I think since busways took over, and then again since the metro came in, we've just seen so many issues with Lane Cove buses. And I've been quite active on Council pushing for us to actually record those issues and who's being impacted. And we know that there are people in aged care facilities and sort of independent living who don't have vehicles anymore. They don't drive. They need to be able to get a reliable bus just to get themselves up to the village to do their banking, to go to the shops, to have coffee with a friend, and they've basically been cut off. And that's really not okay. And so I think something that we need to look at continuing to work on in the next term is something to fill that gap. So while Council can continue advocating, we also need to be looking at how we can make sure we've got people connected to the central hub. So I worked with one of the independent councillors, Councillor Bridget Kennedy, and we both brought forward a motion to do a feasibility assessment on a local shuttle bus. So again, that's sort of looking at how we fill that gap, how we can keep people connected. And that's something that would really help, particularly older people who aren't able to drive anymore, so that they've still got those connections. They can still get up to the village to see their friends. They can still go do their banking. And that's something that I really want to see the next term of Council deliver on.
Thank you, Rochelle. Katie.
Well, aged care is something that I'm really passionate about because I'm the sandwich generation. I was saying that for years, stuck between aging parents and young kids, and it's so difficult. My parents, both of them, were in aged care for a decade of my life. So I know intimately how difficult it is. I'm an only child as well, so I've got no siblings too. How difficult it is. Staying where you are, having services that support you to stay, living as long as you can in your own home. Loneliness is, apparently one of the biggest sort of killers, to be honest, in Japan as well too, which I think in this day and age where you think there's the internet and social media and people should be more connected, actually, I think people are getting lonelier and lonelier a lot of the time too. So really one of that main idea I had, which was to establish a social support resource centre, is just for different parts of society, but particularly for aging people, for the elderly as well too, if they're worried about scam protection, which is really all prevalent and quite terrifying for all sorts of people, but particularly if you're a little bit, worried about sort of answering emails and just clicking on things and all sorts of stuff like that too. I think transportation absolutely is really important as well too. I'm hearing from lots of people how they've got really difficulty with bus services, which is unfortunately, I think, a state issue. But James works for Transport New South Wales, which is fantastic too. So I'm really led by what he can say, but maybe we can sort of, make little shuttle buses or something just to help the elderly so that they feel not just that they can get transported from A to B, but also make it so that it's some sort of a social outing or way to connect with each other as well too. I'm extremely passionate about aged care. I've spoken about it for years and years, and was a big, was on trying to get how do you even start talking about how much needs to be done, really? Yes, I'm very passionate when it comes to aged care.
We've got that. Okay, so while I've got you, I'm trying to get a mix of questions because there are a lot of questions on the same theme. So the next one I'd like to ask is about local business and small business. And can you talk about your policies for current small businesses in Lane Cove, their challenges and the importance in our local economy? what measures would you implement to support local small business, especially with the rising costs and economic uncertainty? Would you like to start, Katie?
Yeah, sure. Actually, small businesses is something we were talking about at our table with the team as well. I used to have a small business. It was really successful. It was a graphic design business that I sort of started when I was in my early 20s, and it kind of took off to have about sort of 6 or 7 staff. So I absolutely, and my parents as well. My father also was an interior designer with his own small business as well too. So I am all for supporting small business. I think that's where that makes the community really, and makes Lane Cove as well extremely unique and a thriving, fabulous community as well too. So one of the things we were talking about too was saying that that small business and also tradespeople as well too, to try and make it more accessible, so that small business are supported or tradespeople are supported in trying to sort of get help for like tendering type programs and stuff. Honestly, I'm depending on the knowledge and information of my team when I sit down at a table and talk to them, particularly David Rainfeld, who's so wonderful and can go, right, this is a great idea and this is how you can do it, and we can use this and this and this and put it together. So I love small business. I think it's essential, and it's so, yep, I'm just thrilled that Lane Cove isn't, monopolised by a huge shopping centre, and that there is such thriving small business. It's great.
Thank you. Rochelle?
Thanks, Jackie. Yes, I think there is more that council can do to support local businesses. I love the village feel that we have in Lane Cove, and I think that comes down to the fact that we do have such unique local businesses, and we have people who are sort of putting down their business roots, and they're based in our community, and they're really doing a lot to deliver for Lane Cove residents. And so I think as a council, some of the things that we could look at would be, how do we tackle issues around vacant properties? So we know, for example, along Longueville Road, there are some long-term businesses that have just been left sitting empty. The owners are overseas. It's very difficult for us to get those used, and that's sort of something that we could do if they weren't sitting vacant. That would help revitalise part of that strip, and that's sort of particularly down the end of Longueville, closer to the intersection, the main interchange. So whether we look at, incentivising basically the owners of those shop fronts to make sure that they're using those shop fronts. Up in Newcastle, they looked at how they could use vacant properties, like vacant shopfront properties, to have creative ventures. So they had, Renew Newcastle, and it was sort of this, using this empty space to try and revitalise it, have a bit more of a creative hub, bring people in, and try and just revamp an area. And I think aside from that, it's looking at long-term planning. What's our overall vision for our shopping strips? How do we want to make sure that Lane Cove Village, the plaza, the shops in over towards Lane Cove West, how do we look at those all together and plan around that? I think what happened with the plaza area, and sort of this was obviously before my time, but making that more pedestrian friendly, initiatives like that are really key to helping to revitalise the space, make it have a sort of a shared vibe, and bring more people in. So I think that's something that we could look at doing in the next term to try and make those spaces more appealing, make sure we don't have vacant shops sitting there for long periods of time not being used, and look at what we can do to lobby for essentially more affordable rents for businesses, so that we don't lose key businesses in the local area.
Thanks, Rochelle. I'm going to stay with you because there's a lot of questions that are sort of on the same theme. So I'm going to ask this one. What do you think of Mr. Benison not being involved in his Zoom? Do you think it's reflective of his attitude towards the community and his role as a councillor? And are you happy referencing him and supporting him as mayor? Katie, you want to? Sorry.
Oh, sure.
Rochelle, do you want to? Oh, Katie can. Yep. Go first. Go for it.
Oh, okay. So Scott Benison, yes, was
Yes.
the question. Sorry, I thought Rochelle was speaking first. So
I'm happy for Rochelle to speak first, but if you're happy, it's okay as well. Sorry, it was just a glitch.
I think there's been a lot of sort of conversation too, of sort of saying how come we preferenced Scott on our how to vote cards as well. And all I can say is that I'm really privileged to be working with a team of people who their first priority was putting aside their personal sort of ideologies, I suppose you could say, and prioritising that governance and compliance in the council was their main concern, particularly when it came to the $81 million sport and rec centre, that they felt that the team felt that really that's how you could sort of put together a better functioning council. So that's why that preference was done. And I think it's disappointing that Scott wasn't here tonight too, because everyone should be allowed to speak and say, especially if they're on, to be here to be voted for too, like that. I'm sure it would have been lovely to have heard what he would say too. So, it would have been great if he was here. So, yeah.
Thanks, Katie. Rochelle?
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, look, I think in terms of the attendance tonight, it's, hard to say that it's not disappointing. I think, as a local councillor and as a candidate for local council, it is the level of government closest to the people. You need to be contactable, you need to be approachable, and you need to be willing to answer questions and talk to residents about what you're doing. And, I think that's really vital for a functioning local democracy. And so I think these forums and the time that's put into organising them, it's so valuable. And it is a shame when you don't get to hear from everybody. To answer the other part of the question in terms of I think you were talking to sort of preferences and working together. I would just say that while there has been division on the issue of sport and rec, and I think for really valid reasons, I'm happy to talk to why I, at various points, didn't support the way it was progressing. Not that I didn't support a centre at all, but that I had issues and concerns. But outside of that, as a council, we actually worked quite well together. If you look at the voting records, there weren't very many issues that came down to a divided vote. And so I think the narrative that we were dysfunctional, that there was no proper governance, is just wrong. We were actually achieving some really good things for the community. And for those of us who continue to raise questions and try to advocate for the community, I think it's just disappointing to see that, we've got a joining up of potentially the major parties just really wanting to silence that and to weaponize that, the fact that we were asking questions, that we were interrogating, that we were trying to get transparent processes. And I think you always need to put the community first. And that's something that I'll stand by.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'll stay with you. What are the candidates' thoughts on increasing the uptake of renewables in units and apartments?
Thank you, Jackie. So I did mention some of this in my introduction, but I think one thing we need to look at is the idea of a community battery. So we've got some councils working on this, like we've got Byron Shire Council, there's a few others in metropolitan areas that are now starting to look at it as well, because that's a way that you can give access to people who don't have their own sort of dedicated rooftop. They might be in a strata system, and while we have got approaches at council to go out to these strata buildings and try and get them to put solar on their roofs, it's not always happening. It can take a long time. So I think if we want people to have access to cheaper power, and if we want to move us towards net zero at a quicker rate, one of the best ways we can do that is with a community battery. And I think that's something that should be investigated. And I think we should also look more at putting solar on community-owned buildings. So we've done it with a number of sites already, but then looking at whether we can feed that back into the grid and make sure that people have access to it, particularly people in units, because people in units are often renters, cost of living issues. If we can deliver cheaper power, then that's something that's really important and will make a difference for people.
Thank you. Katie?
So I think it's really important to think that, if people are, just working hard and they're supporting young children and they're getting through day to day or week by week, it's almost a luxury to be thinking sometimes about environmental concerns. I think we're so fortunate to live in a very affluent community that can actually prioritise real changes in environmental sustainability. That's something I'm really passionate about. I know there's the carbon reduction target of 80% by 2036, I think it is too. And so this is the chance really to make really important changes in environmental policy, such as the strata on solar design, which is putting strata solar panels on, hopefully, the validity of it anyway, to have new strata buildings, to require them to have solar panels on their structures, and then also to be doing community batteries and things like that too, I think is really important, because you know, then you can, I think Lane Cove really just leads the way in so many respects that hopefully then other people will start to look at it and go, wow, what a great way to live. Like, that's really inspiring. I really think that I think there was the gas as well, which, you know, no new gas sort of in fittings as well, in buildings and coming into. There's so many things that you can do where council can really shape. It's really local issues that really are shaping environmental policies, which can make such a difference to people's lives, you know, not breathing in the gas fumes. My youngest son started getting asthma, and I didn't actually realise it was sort of because we had a gas heater and stuff like that too. So these sorts of things, maybe if you're fortunate enough to be prioritising environmental concerns, that's fantastic. If you're just working hard and working your guts out and sort of, you know, just getting through day to day, I personally couldn't afford daycare. I had more than one child and I couldn't afford it. So, you know, as a woman now, I don't have sort of any kind of superannuation much at all. Like, it's just a compounding thing too. So the more that a council and a community can do to build up the entire community by these sorts of things, yeah, I think that's just such a great opportunity to make positive change in the world.
Thank you. Sorry, there's so many questions and a lot of them do overlap, and I really wanted to get as many different topics covered. We're getting very close to the end, and I also feel like, because there's only been two of you, this must be exhausting, and I really appreciate both of you doing such a great job in answering all the questions. So I'm just trying to go back and double check everything as I go to make sure I've covered it all. Glenn asked, and again, this is on Sport and Rec, so we know it's a big topic. If council officers make a recommendation that they think an external operator can manage a facility better than council itself, such as the Lane Cove Aquatic and Future Sport and Rec, in what circumstances do you think a councillor can override that recommendation? Well, that probably goes to a lot of things, really, but yeah, in what circumstances can a councillor override an officer's recommendation?
So I'll just start by saying these are the sorts of issues that obviously getting into sort of nitty gritty of things like this too. I'm looking forward to discussing with people who understand process and order and the history of certain things as well too. Obviously, I think things should be open for community access always. I think, you know, look, I'm thrilled as a woman to be able to be offered the opportunity and know that if I do get elected as councillor, I have all this sort of amazing kind of training available to me to be able to understand the issues that the community really want and how to actually make these sorts of things happen. But I don't think I can speak out and sort of say, oh, it should be privately run or it should be council run or that sort of stuff too. There's obviously many factors that come into play, and the job of a councillor is to listen to all these factors and work out what the best way forward is for the overall good of the community and also for economic sort of future thinking sustainability. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Rochelle?
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you for the question. I think this goes to the heart of what the role of a councillor is. At the end of the day, a councillor isn't just a rubber stamp there to wave through preordained decisions made by staff. We're there as a democratically elected representative to listen to and advocate for our community. And the role of the councillor within the legislation, so what we are actually bound to do, requires us to be active participants in decision making. So again, this isn't passive, just signing off on something because you heard it's the right way. You have to actively participate, think about the process yourself, and bring in the role of the community. We are that nexus between the council staff and residents. And we get good outcomes when we look at things critically, when we don't just accept something at face value, when we bring in outside perspectives from residents who are often incredibly knowledgeable and have knowledge that might have otherwise been missed. And I think one of the best examples of this was with 14 Gay Street, because the initial staff recommendation was to subdivide and to sell and to have part of that developed. So we would have lost that as a full bushland site if we hadn't questioned and queried that decision and listened to experienced residents and bush care volunteers who knew the value and the importance of that site. So again, I think, as much as I value the expertise of our staff, and it's really important that we do listen to them, that's only part of the puzzle. We need to listen to residents. We need to listen to the community, because that is our role. And so I think it's really important that we do that at every step.
Thank you. Katie, did you answer that question? Because I'm getting tired myself.
Oh, I'm muted again. Yeah, I think I did already answer it. Yeah, I'm
great.
just thinking if you hear a noise, it's my stomach rumbling.
Okay, well, that's a good time to say to everybody, because we were going to go to 9 o'clock, but that was when there were more candidates. So I think I'm going to wrap it up now and personally thank both Rochelle and Katie for being so open and answering all the questions. We did say, please don't, that we'd only ask questions to both candidates. So so I really appreciate you both doing that. Someone said there was a question about why wasn't every person standing for Land Cove West in the forum. And as I mentioned at the start, we only ask the lead candidates because it gets too confusing when you have every person along. But if you want to see information about the teams that the two candidates have put together, then please go along to our website. We've got very nice pictures and we've got a lot of information there. And I really appreciate you both making the time and effort to come along today. And I really, as I think I've said to you before, we tried to have these had these forums in person, and we feel that having it online means it's more accessible to different elderly who can't get out, the young, whatever. So really appreciative. It will be recorded. So if you want to come back and look at it, we'll have it up as soon as possible. And just to confirm, because someone asked, yes, Mr. Benison was invited and told me today that he couldn't come, but I have put out to him, because I want to be fair, that if he wants to, I can record him and then ask the same questions. But he didn't get back to me, so that's fine. I just want to be fair. So at the end of the day, I'd like to thank all of the participants who've been very engaged. I'd like to thank both candidates and say to everyone, have a good night, and we'll see you on the 14th of September. Everyone, bye.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.